Islam has some values and some rules. Okay, now these values serve for two things. One, it helps you work on yourself, that are you really submitting to God, right? And for different people, it's different things, right? Everybody has some sort of, so within the laws of Islam, especially when people are new to it, everybody has some challenge, right? And many people have multiple challenges. So that's something to remember. Now, the second thing is that those rules are not random. So it's not that, okay, let me just put this thing out. No. So those are also meant, they have a wisdom behind it that has a greater good for the community, right? It may not be like a short-term good, okay, I'm really struggling with this, but overall there's a greater good in the community. So that's two things to remember very importantly, right? Now, some people may have an issue with prayer. I can't wake up in the morning and perform prayer, right? So what should that person do, right? One option is to realize that, you know what, based on my research, I know this is from my God, right? And I accept it, right? And I will work towards it. And the other approach is, so you know the story of Satan and Adam and his wife, okay? So there's a clear example in there, right? So before Satan was asked to prostrate to Adam, everything was nice, right? He's one of the really celebrated ones. He's with the honorable angels, and it's fine. But everybody has this thing that they will be tested with, right? So now his thing was arrogance, right? Now all of a sudden somebody else has a superiority over me, and that's not something I can accept. Before that, yeah, fine. As long as God is, letting me enjoy and I have the power, no problem. But as long as, you test me with this thing, that's when I get exposed. So what he did was he justified his way, right? Now, on the contrary, if you look at our Father and the role and the example that he created for us, is that he wasn't given like a physical reason of what's wrong with the tree. It's not that, okay, this is poisonous, it's addictive, it has a lot of cholesterol, it has less ketones, you can't eat from. No, it was just like, okay, this is your hudud, this is your boundary. Everything else is permissible for you, don't do this, right? And Satan tapped into the desires of like, okay, you will live forever, you'll become like angels, you'll have a kingdom that will never perish. So he used those and connected it with the tree. Okay, and then Adam fell for it too. But then he repented. He didn't justify. Oh, why did you create the tree? That's natural. You create a tree, so I will have a desire. If you don't want it to be like, don't create the tree, block it, whatever, right? And we realize that, yeah, I transgressed my boundary. There's so much things that are permissible, right? Now, so same thing, right? So that's something very important. So just like God doesn't want you to worship idols, and it's unjust to worship idols, God does not want you to eat non-halal food or pork or have alcohol and or have like intimate relationship with whoever you want, right? So there's certain boundaries, right? Now, yes, what Satan does, he associates pleasure with things that God doesn't want us to do, right? Whether by using image, by using thoughts, by using whispers, whatever, right? And now it becomes a personal struggle to work on it. If you see what I'm saying, right? Yeah. So one of my point is that LGBTQ stuff is kind of similar to other rules in Islam as well, right? Like don't eat pork, right? And don't eat alcohol, don't do drugs, whatever, right? So all these things apply in the same category. So my question for you is that, okay, why does the LGBTQ ruling make it even more special, right? Why is it not viewed like other things that are prohibited in Islam, such as drugs, such as alcohol?
I think part of it is because it's one of the things that I find difficult in telling the people around me, because my family and my friends know, and I was like very like active in that community before, so it's gonna seem like a contradiction maybe, and I think it's just very hard. Like if a person, so I see it as an identity, which I know is not the way that it's seen within Islam. It's more as like desires that exist. And so I think that makes it a little bit different for me to imagine someone who would like have this identity and it's not necessarily something that can change, and you're not even legally allowed to try to change it in Ontario. Have to be like celibate for their entire life. It's just challenging.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I see. Yeah, so that it has become like a movement as well, right? But if you really think about the foundational value of that movement, well, there's an acceptance part of it, right? So like, having them equal opportunities in workplace and all those things, right? That stuff we don't control. It's not something that we impose on, right? And so that's a separate issue, right? And then there's also this underlying thing of that everybody should be allowed to do whatever they want, right? And that's just calling for absolute no values, no boundaries, nothing, right? And then obviously, one of the contentions is like, okay, where do you stop, right? Then, as people are already doing, like, let's put incest into it, right? Let's put, children into it, right? There's no stopping then, right? Where do you actually stop? So I see from that angle why it's important, but I'm saying that, okay, from a personal level, so there's two things, right? How does one deal with it personally, right? And how does one deal with it when explaining it to other people? So the key thing is that, just like how, for example, somebody would say, sorry about that. Like how somebody would say that, Islam actually does have values against, abortion, right? Like you can't just like abort a child unless it's like, clearly dangerous and so on and so forth, right? Okay, sorry. Yeah, so Islam has like values, right? So like, I mean, let's say if somebody were to ask me like, yeah, I mean, this is similar to saying, okay, for example, one of the common things in the society is that, people have, sex outside of marriage, right? So what's Islam's ruling on that?
That's
right. So even if it's hetero, right, it's still forbidden. So that's kind of like where we take it from. Right? Is that, yeah, there are certain values that are, un-Islamic, right? But if somebody were to commit that, does that mean that he or she becomes non-Muslim?
No.
Right. So it's a sin. It's a major sin, right? But as long as the person recognizes that it's a sin and I'm working on it, you don't become a non-Muslim just by that, right? Now there are various levels of it. One is like, you realize that, look, this is my challenge. I need to work on it. I'm still doing my prayers, right? So there's a whole spectrum of things. I'm taking care of my pillars, but that's my one thing that I'm working on, right? So that person would not be calling for it. Okay, let's support it, let's celebrate it, let's everybody do it. It's different than when people are celebrating it, when people are pronouncing it, or if it's something that's done, behind the privacy of their homes, right? So that's a different thing, and you're working towards it. So that's how you would say to someone like, just like Islam doesn't allow premarital sex, Islam doesn't allow alcohol, Islam doesn't allow, these are things that are from God, right? So you have two options. One is that you accept them and then you work on doing that. Or you say, I negate it, I challenge it, that's a different position to be in.
Okay.
So
for me, it's more like struggling just with the theory of it and the internal acceptance or not acceptance of it. But just historically speaking, I think it's a lot of changes that have happened in my life in a short amount of time. So
right.
It can be a little overwhelming. Personally, I have like attraction to both sexes, so I can just be like choose male and it will align, which is fortunate. I just have a lot of people in my life that that's not the case.
Right.
Because it's personal, it's more difficult.
Right. So so here's the thing, right? So my point is, those people are not Muslims, right? They don't pray. So I would be more concerned that they're not Muslims and they don't pray than about their sexual choices. That makes sense, right? So, it would be way better for them to actually become Muslims, to learn the rulings and then work towards it, right? Because again, at the end of the day, it's like about the choices, right? So once people start valuing and loving Allah more, then they're able to have more discipline around things that Allah does not like, right? And then that can be worked out, right? And let's say, hypothetically speaking, if somebody has that challenge, it doesn't work out for them and they're doing it behind the scenes, what have you, right? Then their matter is with Allah. I'm not here to judge them. You're not here to judge them, right? And, we see them as praying. We see them as practicing, right? Again, I don't know, but I'm just saying that behind the scenes, what they do is their private life, right?
Mhm.
And maybe there is a way that they can work towards changing their desires,
Mhm.
right? Like, I mean, for example, the point being that, look, I mean, there's been many sisters who have become Muslim, right? And they really liked to dress well and show off their beauty and whatnot. And now they love, being covered and, using hijab and so on and so forth,
Mhm.
right? They don't have to discipline themselves to do it. They naturally do it.
Mhm.
Obviously, there was a transition period where they may have to discipline themselves to do it,
Mhm.
but now they love it, right? So what the heart loves is also something that Allah controls. So as you put in some effort, Allah makes it happen. So the concept of desires, I mean, the question is, can Allah not change a desire, right?
Mhm.
So again, so if I were to break it down, I'd really like to break down things. Number one, personally at your level, you have to see that, okay, this is where I exist, right? And these are some of my challenges that make me sin prone,
Mhm.
right? That will lead me to sins, right? Okay, how do I work on them?
Mhm.
Very clear, right? That personally speaking, right? If I fall into sins, what do I do?
Repent.
You repent and you say, okay, what can I do to make it better, whatever, right? Or how do I prevent myself from being in situations that would lead me to doing stuff I don't want to do?
Mhm.
When it comes to people, how do I explain it to them? Look, this is how it is, right? This is what Islam allows, this is what Islam doesn't allow, right? Things that Islam does not allow have categories, have layers. So what's most important of that is you to not worship your desires, not worship community, not worship a social identity, but to worship Allah and take your identity as Muslim. That's the most important thing.
Mhm.
So once you have that, then is your 5 daily prayers, then other things like that.
Yeah.
And any sin that you do, you don't go and call other people to commit to those things, right? So I mean, I assume you would agree that if you want to look at it at a global level, at a community level, if people were not to encourage other people to do it, it would have lesser impact, right? Now, then there's a different theory about it, like people who do it in the community, what do we do with them, right? So that's a different topic. We're not saying that, okay, we don't give them jobs or we don't let them do what they want. That's a different topic in itself, right?
Okay. Because I read a post and it was someone explaining the Muslim or the Islamic view on these topics, and then at the end talked about how it is understandable and permissible to fire someone if you found out that they were gay and talking about that at work and those kinds of things. So
okay, so here's my question, right? Then
yeah.
Would that not apply to someone who does alcohol or promotes drugs or or does not even worship Allah or calls to atheism, right? Right. Would you go and fire them?
Personally, no. So that's why it's difficult for me to understand.
So that's the thing, right? So when you're running a business, obviously you have to look at the overall objective of the business, where you're running the business, what values your business wants to have, right?
Yeah.
So for example, right now in this mosque, right, it's a different thing than me running a store, for example, right? When me running, let's say, a company that's traded on public market, right, stock market. But if I'm running a mosque, right, if we have a staff member that promotes this, right?
Yeah, it just doesn't align.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense for us to keep that person, right? Yeah, but again, it depends on the business, right? If I have my own family business, right, and and I value Islamic values, and hey, the business is about this thing. Let's be best and serve our customers, right? What you do behind in your home doesn't concern us in that sense, right? But if you're gonna come in and then say, what, you're gonna promote a lifestyle, then I would have to think about it from a business perspective, right? So even in Islam, you have to weigh the harms and the benefits, right? What is the objective, right? If it's a clear thing that it's gonna, harm people, other people, whatever, right? So again, I haven't thought about this thoroughly, but I'm just saying that would be like a business decision, right? But I can discuss some parameters that somebody would be thinking about. But what I would say is that same thing, the person should be considering that, okay, what about the person promoting atheism and Christianity, right? Similar to that, right? There's just being, and in the past, in the history, we have seen that Muslim businesses have employed non-Muslims,